Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of D&D CR Exposed. On today's episode we are looking at Zariel from the Monster Manual, Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. That's it, not Monster Manual. And you can find it on page 280, so if you want to follow along you can do so as I go through this. Now, before we get into that, let's take care of the business real quick. The tool here to make correctly balanced monsters from the Dungeon Master's rule set for custom monsters. You can get this tool for free, completely for free, from my Ko-fi page with the link in the description below, as well as all the other links that you can find down there. There's a bunch of them, or a couple of them, I don't know. Yeah, I got a Blue Sky account, which I make posts on occasionally, and a few other items down there as well. The tool itself, you can get it completely for free, or you can donate if you feel so inclined to. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, you could leave a like, subscribe, comments and whatnot, share it with a friend. That'd be super awesome. You can also donate financially if you'd like, with as little as $1 a month here on YouTube. You can become a YouTube member, or you can also support me on Ko-fi for monthly posts, for a monthly fee of, I don't want to say fee, but a monthly donation of $1 as well. Of course you can cancel at any time, and there's a bunch of other things there as well. Subclasses that I've been creating. I'm currently working on a new Warlock subclass where the patron is you. Yes, you, viewer, listener, are the patron for this Warlock class. So it's a kind of a fourth wall breaking Warlock subclass that I was, kind of inspired to create and whatnot. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into this this episode here. So, what are we looking at here? Well, we are looking at Zariel from, like I said, Monsters of the Multiverse, and she is a rather chunky CR 26, so we'll go ahead and throw that in. And then we will start from the top and work our way down. So, again, one other thing here, if you know where this information is coming from, then you know, and if you don't know, I'm not telling you, so unfortunately, I can't help you out with that. There we go. Okay. Beyond that, let's jump into the rest of this here. So, our Zariel, a large fiend, and yes, I have covered it as a short, so you could check my shorts for that if you want something a little quicker than this, but some people don't like the quick nature of it, so I will be doing the long form here. Wow, Zariel is a large fiend. That's surprising. I didn't realize she was so big. In any event, she has 29 hit dice with the following stats of 27 strength, 24 dex, 28 con, 26 intelligence, 27 wisdom, and 30 charisma. Wow, she's got a lot going on for her. Alright, on top of that we have resistance to cold, fire, radiant, bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from non-magical attacks that aren't silvered. That probably isn't going to be doing anything for us, but we do also have immunities to necrotic and poisoned, as well as charmed, exhaust, frightened, and the poisoned condition. So that's nice to see that they are combining the damages and the immunities into one area, so no longer do we have a separate column for its own thing. Now, what is this gear? Apparently this is what she has on her, which is kind of neat to see. Okay, no, we'll just go with that for now, and we will continue on. Now, we do have necrotic and poison, but because it's not 3 conditions, I'm not going to put in immunities. I will put in the immunity or resistances for her, but because her CR is so high that resistances doesn't affect her defensive CR whatsoever. So moving on, we're going to go into the monster traits here because nothing else matters for calculating the CRs for our monsters. And we have Devil Sight, which doesn't matter. We do have legendary resistances and magic resistance, which is the general combo here, which does matter. So we'll go ahead and throw those in. 3 resistances and 1 magic resistance for a total of 90 effective hit points and plus 2 effective AC. From there we have regeneration. Zariel regains 20 hit points at the start of her turn, unless she takes radiant damage, or probably a critical or something like that. All we care about is the number. So for every turn, she's going to regenerate 20 hit points, which means over the 3 rounds of combat, we will see 20 or 60 effective hit points gained there as well. So as you can see, our defensive capabilities are already skyrocketing, or plummeting we should say, down into the CR here, and we're already at a CR 13 with a base CR 0 at the moment. Now that our traits are done for Zariel, let's go ahead and look at our actions. And before we get into the actions, actually, real quick, I'm going to talk about magic. The spellcasting here, generally speaking, I'm going to stop calculating defensive magic, because basically what happens is it kind of counterbalances the lack of offensive. So if you have a 0, like for whatever reason you decide to use a defensive spell for one round, then you would just put a 0 in for your offensive capabilities, and that should technically balance out the monster, in theory anyways. So I am just going to be focusing solely on as much offensive capabilities as possible, unless the monster is highly defensive, which in most cases monsters generally are supposed to be offensive, I think anyways, but don't technically quote me on that. Anyways, back to our actions. We have a multi-attack. Zariel makes 3 flail or longsword attacks. She can replace 1 attack with a use of horrid touch. So looking at her flail, longsword, and horrid touch, we have a 16 to hit. So the 16 is coming from her strength, so we can just go ahead and drop that in right now. And then we will go ahead and throw in the attacks for our flail first. So that's going to be 17 damage from her force here, plus 36 fire damage in total for 53 damage in total. Yes. From there, we then move on to the flail. Or excuse me, I already did flail, the longsword. It's a little late, I'm recording, so I'm stumbling over my words here. Now, in theory, if we're using the longsword, we would be using it at two-handed, and because our AC doesn't indicate anything about armor, we should be using it at two-handed. And then that would just be 19, because we have an average number of dice, plus another 36 for fire damage, giving us 55 points of damage. Regardless, we could say the average for our weapons here is 54 points of damage if you two-hand the longsword or use the flail. It doesn't really matter. 2 points may or may not be the big difference here. Now, we can switch for 1 horrid touch for the multi-attack, and that is going to be a DC 26 con save or take 44 necrotic damage for any creatures within 10 feet of her. So this is a short burst AoE. Now, if this was Tales of the Valiant, we would be modifying this ever so slightly, but because it's not, we're not. And the creatures will become poisoned, and the target's blinded and deafened. So let's take a look at the damage real quick. Now, because this is only 10 feet, for a burst, and a typical group may usually include 1 melee fighter, some kind of a tank, sometimes a striker, maybe a rogue, a barbarian, a melee ranger, another paladin, maybe it's a fighter and a paladin, or it could be a ranged ranger, maybe a ranged rogue, someone doing range. So we would expect maybe, we're definitely going to have 1, but in theory, because it's only a 10-foot burst, we may only see the 1. So I'm going to count this for 1 for the time being. In theory, best case scenarios, we would normally do 2, but because of that short burst, I'm going to say it's only 1. So we will go ahead and throw in the 44 points of damage there. We're going to get that once because of the recharge to 5 to 6, so in theory we will only see that 1 out of every 3 rounds of combat. If combat goes to 4, 5, and 6, then we will likely see a second use of this. And then on top of that, we get, let's see here, they get damaged and poisoned for 1 minute. While poisoned this way, the target is blinded and deafened. Blinded is actually pretty good because that gives basically a short-term AC boost, because the target now has disadvantage, but they need to be blinded in this way to get the AC bonus. So it's kind of like a reverse pack tactics, where pack tactics is situational and gives a +1 attack bonus boost. Blinded in this case, I would say, is a +1 AC boost just for that. Deafened isn't exactly that important. So we do have the poisoned and we have the AC boost. So poisoned also gives a +1 bonus here. If we go to the stench, which is the troglodyte item here, that's +1 effective AC there, and then we will go ahead and throw in 1 more AC bonus here. So we're getting technically 2 for 1 target being poisoned and blinded. And then after that we have the spell casting. We have Alter Self, Detect Evil and Good, Fireball, Invisibility, Major Image, Wall of Fire, Blade Barrier, Dispel Magic, or excuse me, Dispel Evil and Good, and Finger of Death. Let's see here. More than likely these are going to come in from legendary actions. Are they? No, they're not. Okay, so Fireball. Fireball is what? Usually like 56 points of damage, I think, on average. Let's take a quick look here. That should be, is that a level 3? Yeah, Fireball, perfect. Fireball, 56 points of damage. That's exactly the same as her offensive capabilities, pretty much. As we can see here, you know, our two-handed longsword is going to be dealing 55 points of damage. So unless you're catching more than just 2 targets, and in theory you would hopefully hit maybe 3 or 4, we're not really going to worry too much about that. Wall of Fire here is a good possibility, or Blade Barrier. Wall of Fire is obviously a concentration spell, something you would want to throw in right off the top of the bat. And it is a level 4 evocation spell, so let's see here. Level 4 Wall of Fire is going to give us roughly 45 points of damage every round of combat. Now, it is initially a small dip in combat damage, but it's sustained every round of combat in theory, and could be dealing damage every round. But more than likely, it probably won't. We will probably only see this once, as players move through it, and then the Wall of Fire is done, and then you're wasting your time putting the Wall of Fire back up. So in theory, although it is a really good concentration spell, probably not worthwhile. Now, we also have Invisibility. The problem is this takes an action to cast, and it is not superior invisibility. So it's only really good to get Zariel out of combat. If she's having a problem and needs to get out of there, Invisibility is going to be her go-to in order to get out of combat. Major Image might be handy. This could be something set up before the encounter starts, or even before she encounters any of the party. Beyond that, nothing else really is worthwhile. Blade Barrier is another one. It's another wall, and walls are usually dealt with once, and then the players avoid that at all costs unless they're pushed back through the wall by a monster feature or some kind of regional effect or a lair action or something. So my initial theory was, any kind of wall that causes damage, let's just count that every round of combat because we are considering the best case scenario. Well, in theory, we should be considering, when it comes to spell casting, how quickly are the players going to react and shut down these types of things from happening again. So this was something that came from Tales of the Valiant and was very important for me to understand, especially when looking at Tales of the Valiant casting monsters. So I'm just looking at pure melee possibilities here for the time being. If need be, we can throw in maybe a Finger Death, level 7 Necromancer spell. Let's see, what would be the damage for that? Finger of Death here. 61.5 average damage. That's probably about accurate. Let's see here, get the full description in here. So yeah, Finger of Death could be worthwhile, especially when a creature is low on their hit points, and then if we can outright kill the player, then we got something going on there. And that was my cat. Target takes Constitution saving throw damage of 78 plus 30 necrotic damage, or half as much as this on a success. So because this is actually pretty, it's a little higher, we could say, a Finger of Death somewhere in there. We may not want to use all of these right off the bat. We do have 3 of them. Well, we do get 3 of each per day. So in theory, we could just Finger of Death 3 times in a row and see what happens there. What did I say? It was like 61.5, so we'll just leave it at 60. Well, 61.5. We'll go for that there. And we'll take a look at that too to see what the potential for damage is with that spell. It's not going to be too terribly much because it's only about 8 points different. So we'll see. Okay, next we have legendary actions, and as we can see here, there is lair actions. I'm not going to go into lair actions. It will just increase the CR by 1, maybe 2 steps at tops, and it's generally marked up here as well. They didn't have it for Zariel here, but sometimes when the monster is expected to be in the lair, it's a little better. All right, so teleporting. Zariel can teleport once, which is actually kind of important, and I've built in a teleporting feature here. I forgot to turn that off. I gotta fix my script so that gets removed. So that's why her defensive CR was so huge. Teleporting, how far can she teleport? Oh, she just uses teleport. Okay. Oh, there we go. Teleport action, it was right above 120 feet. Okay, so we'll just put that right back in. And this is worth 68 effective hit points every round. If we want to use that, otherwise we can do immolating gaze, which would be Zariel turns her magical gaze towards a creature. She can see with 120 feet. DC 26 save or takes 22 fire damage, but that's only one target and it's worth 2 actions. Honestly, it would probably be better suited to have Zariel use her teleport to jump around a whole bunch. So more than likely that's what I'm going to use for her teleporting. Is just going to leave that on and she'll be teleporting. Technically she could teleport up to 3 times, but I'm just going to leave this at the bare minimum here of maybe once. Maybe she only needs to teleport once. Okay, let's go ahead and make up our multi-attack here. Now, like I said before, the multi-attack is going to be our longsword times 3, because we can choose between the flail and the longsword, and because it's doing ever so slightly more damage, we will go ahead and do that. Is there any other point besides the 10-foot? Yeah, they're both 10-foot reach. There's really no difference between, I mean, it's just thematics at this point. And then legendary action is going to be our teleporting, so let's see what here. Let's see what we got going on. First round is going to be... Well, actually, hold on. We also have this times 2 plus the horrid touch. So we'll do that once. Even though it is a little less. We'll go ahead and put that in. And then rounds 2 and 3 will be the standard multi-attack fare. And at the moment, we are sitting at a CR 27, as you can see in my green zone here. Now, that's only one step above what they have projected for Zariel at CR 26, so you know the difference here is very minimal. More than likely poisoned and blinded probably weren't accounted for, so if we remove these two, yeah, then we're getting CR 26. So if we don't get the constitution save bonus, then our damage is what, probably halved. And it looks like no. Well, in any event, it looks like Zariel is pretty much balanced. I don't know what my shorts had said. Probably the shorts were much higher because I included the wall of fire or a blade barrier. The finger of death we can also take a look at if we want to modify this ever so slightly and get a slightly higher look here. And finger of death is, what was that? Spellcasting is a DC 26, so let's go ahead and switch this up real quick. Difficulty check is a 26 coming from her charisma, and we're going to use the concentration because we are going to say, oh, layer action every round of combat. Or no, excuse me, there we go. 184. So yeah, we're back to CR 27. So Zariel can kind of bounce back and forth between probably a CR 25 if she's missing more often, or a CR 27 on the higher end if you're not using Wall of Fire. More than likely Wall of Fire is gonna be kind of wasted because it's only once. And let me just double check that because I don't quite recall. I don't remember if this is per 1 or per 2. So what's the damage on Wall of Fire here real quick? That is going to be 5d8. Yeah, so more than likely this is just for the one. 5d8, so that's 4.5 times 5 times 2. Yeah, okay. So the 45 damage is for at least 2 targets. More than likely it would be all the targets, but then they have to make a save, and we would expect, you know, 2 failed saves, 1 failed, 2 successes, or 4 successes primarily. So honestly, Wall of Fire isn't going to do that much. Like I said, it's probably only 1 round, or beyond that, I don't know. Blade Barrier is about the same. Finger of Death we've covered, so there we go. More than likely, it looks like Zariel is actually probably balanced at CR 26, even though we're seeing ever so slightly a little higher than we expected with the 27 that I found here. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me as we reviewed Zariel from the Monsters of the Multiverse book, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.